Hello, and thank you for joining me on this video. Today I'm going to talk about the growing Pharisaical spirit in our traditional Catholic community, which is a very important topic. A return to tradition amidst the very real effects of the indifferentism we see today will play a key role in any church revival. But tradition is not true tradition unless it is founded upon Rome, and unless its heart is charity and love. Tradition is not tradition if it comes from a holier-than-thou Pharisaical position. So in this video we'll cover, what does the Bible say about Pharisees? What are we seeing today in the so-called tradcat space that replicates the Pharisaical spirit, especially online? And finally, what is the answer to this? This is a good time for some disclaimers. I really dislike using terms like left and right, liberal and conservative, traditional and progressive, etc., in reference to the different wings of the church. Truth is truth. However, generalizations are useful for the sake of concise argument, and they help to distinguish the forces behind the ebbs and flows of Catholic thought. And for the record, I attend traditional Latin Mass and receive communion on the tongue. I accept Novus Ordo as equal and do not reject Vatican II. Faulty interpretations of Vatican II, on the other hand, must clearly be admonished. But fellow Catholics who love tradition are being infected by this Pharisaical spirit, and it must be highlighted. The very real threat of the pride which subsumed the Pharisees in their legalism is what threatens the lifeblood of the traditional Catholic movement. Someone put it very succinctly to me a short while ago when they said, traditionalism lends itself to legalism, just as progressive Catholicism lends itself to indifferentism. We'll be covering the former in this video. In the Bible, we see that Pharisees were greatly revered by the Jewish community as role models in the faith. They and the scribes were esteemed as the holiest, most devout and learned in the society due to their outward professions of faith and their admonishments of others who they deemed sinful. We see that they rejoiced in legalism. They loved proclaiming their righteousness in public. They indulged in passing judgment on others. They put the letter of the law above its spirit. They persecuted the just. In summary, they strained at gnats, but swallowed camels. In other words, in focusing on the minutiae of legalistic transgressions, they missed the heart of faith, charity, obedience, humility. So do we see this replicated in the traditional Catholicism space today? The answer is an unfortunate yes. A large portion of the traditional Catholic community has been hijacked by a Pharisaical spirit, whether it's advising fellow Catholics to never receive communion in the hand, even if it's the only permitted option, and I've covered this in a recent video. In summary, how we receive should never trump whether we receive, or whether it's sowing doubt and disobedience by promoting denunciations coming from the notorious Archbishop Vigano, who called for Vatican II to be dropped and forgotten, amongst many other letters riddled with anger and insubordination. This exhortation by Vigano was widely heralded by prominent so-called traditional Catholics. Let's just remember what certain popes had to say about Vatican II. Many traditionalists do not understand that it is not Vatican II in and of itself, but its faulty interpretation and implementation which has resulted in the liturgical abuses we see today. I will cover this in a future video. In the meantime, I highly recommend you read Pope Benedict's writings on the hermeneutic of continuity. A third example is indulgence in the Gnostic peddling of conspiracy theory after conspiracy theory. Just scroll through Dr. Taylor Marshall's videos or other trad influencers to see what I mean. Are there some priests who are Freemasons? Of course. Do Satanists have a perennial war against the church? Obviously. These are truisms of life, good versus evil. But these facts do not give a license to make unceasing, spurious and sensational claims based on supposition, especially when you are indicting members of the church hierarchy, as is unfortunately often the case with traditional Catholic influencers. These are just some recent examples of the Pharisaical spirit which is pervading our traditional Catholic community. It goes far deeper, however, and especially in the online community, it manifests in a persistent, toxic spirit of derision, combative one-upmanship, and cheap point scoring. It is a problem and needs uprooting. So what is the answer to this? It's not easy. I return to the excellent point someone made to me. Traditionalism lends itself to legalism just as progressive Catholicism lends itself to indifferentism. Are there problems in the church which relate to modernism? Of course. This is a truism. But what us traditionals must remember is that we have been graced with righteousness. Indeed, and this is an important point, sometimes we might even be more susceptible to assuming righteousness in all our actions. This was the fault too of the Pharisees. In straining at gnats, they swallowed camels. In ensuring the letter of the law is enshrined in and of itself, whilst disposing of charity and swelling with pride, this is indeed to strain at gnats but swallow camels. The mistakes of the Pharisees are pride, insubordination, presumption, and hypocrisy. The allure of Gnosticism, in other words, secret knowledge, is damning, and triumphalism is abound. These are weighty sins and temptations. But aren't the errors of modernism also serious? Yes, obviously. The trap of the Pharisaical spirit is real and spreading. It can cause the faithful to give up their hearts for a false sense of justification and righteousness. Humility is the antidote to pride, but only the secret humility.